Hey everyone, it's Tammy. Want to thank you for joining me today. I have some ideas on what I want to go into. I'm kind of like a theme. We'll see how it goes. If you're new to my channel and watching my video for the first time, welcome. Please feel free to comment, contact me, subscribe, share. I don't have a set schedule on when I do add videos. I posted one just earlier this week from the radio show I did the other day, but it's been a while since I've actually sat down and recorded anything. So I thought, given that today it's November 7th, is a new moon. It's a significant new moon as far as I'm concerned, but the messages around this new moon is kind of significant, and it actually plays into it's just I can see how it relates to our physical health. So that said, by nature, I am an aromacologist. I do practice olfactory therapy as well as offer integrative consults, but my olfactory therapy is really what I'm passionate about. I do have a membership page on Patreon where I am teaching and showing people how to improve their epigenetic health, and so on and so forth. So all of those links are below if you want to get a hold of me in any other way. I do have a background in pharmacology, which is how I came into aromatology. I also continually study plant constituents and their influence on the human genome as it relates to drug development and the research of disease and disorders, which is really what brings me to this point today. The messages from around this new moon, okay, it's a new moon in Scorpio, and it's a divine feminine time. It's the exact middle between the fall equinox and the winter solstice. So it's a very powerful time of release and forgiving ourselves for the experiences that we created for ourselves. I'm going to say it. Our life is our own creation, and the forgiveness piece is the most important piece, because regardless of what anybody says, I think for the most part we have a bad habit of beating up on ourselves. And so being able to forgive ourselves for the experiences we were meant to have, for the experience, and I say we were meant to have because we created them. We lived a life up until this point that manifested both good and bad experiences, what we would deem as good or bad. But the takeaway is that they actually fuel our growth, and they help enhance the next phase of our life. And at this moment with the new moon, it's representative of an ending that stuff doesn't have to happen anymore. That's the reason why I say, can we forgive ourselves for the experiences that we've had up until this point and no longer beat up on ourselves? Because that level of forgiveness, going, I get it. I did what I did. I can see my role in how this happened. Not that you did anything. It's not about doing anything right or wrong or good or bad. It's just that, I didn't think, I didn't believe enough in myself, so I didn't take action. Therefore, I didn't get it. So now, there's all kinds of scenarios, and I could do a whole video just on that. But the point is that how you feel about yourself, and being able to forgive yourself for those actions that didn't lead to the most affluent, happy, however you wanted, whatever it is you were looking for. Can you forgive yourself for what actions you did or didn't take that led to a less than favorable time? And in doing so, we will release what I would call calcified beliefs, that rigidity of how things should be, because that's really what this is. What I've discovered is, the definition of insanity, repeating basically repeating the same behaviors, expecting different results. Even though we may, I used to say with a colleague of mine, same soup, different bowl. We change, we may change a little bit, but essentially what's fueling our actions is identical. And it's because we're so rigid about these beliefs. That's the reason why I say calcified beliefs. It'll begin to dissolve these calcified beliefs, because if you understand calcification in the body, calcification can be dissolved. Okay? So these calcified beliefs, these hardened beliefs that we have stuck to, I firmly believe that for the most part, all of us can say that there's certain points to us that we just recognize that's us. It reminds us of being a kid, how we felt when we were children. There's certain things that we came into this world, certain beliefs. And I've seen this so much, especially lately with the division in this world, especially in this country, the U.S., it's very difficult to express your belief and not have somebody annihilate you, or at least really seriously challenge you. And the fact is that we can respect one another's beliefs. We don't necessarily have to agree. Agreement and respect are two different things. So there's a point, if we were just being brutally honest in the space of our own home with nobody else invading or being present, we can get to what really matters to us. We can really realize what our belief systems are, those that we've adopted as a result of being around other people, from being raised, to our teachers and mentors and employers and coworkers and friends, and you name it. We are our own unique culture. And then we become this, this blend of, then as a society, it's a blend of cultures. However, like I said, I really believe that each one of us presents in this world with our own belief system. And this is part of the reason why we're seeing such a problem, because we all have different beliefs. And everybody is fighting for what's right. Everybody's fighting for what they believe to be the truth. But what's really true for me and right for me is what makes me feel complete and solid, unquestionably satisfied, fulfilled, grounded. That's when I know that I'm in alignment with my beliefs. When I make a decision, and as of lately, or I've just really identified with myself today, as a matter of fact, that I have a tendency to really say yes, and then I go back into realizing I didn't mean yes. I said yes for one thing, and ultimately ended up feeling like shit about myself because I had to go back and revisit the yes with the people or the individual, and basically back out of things that I didn't necessarily want to become involved in, which is not an easy thing. So this is part of, for me today, is really letting go of that need to say yes to everything, and just really standing in what it is I want. I like working with people digitally, meaning, from the space of my own home. I have dogs. I have a lifestyle that takes me outside every single day. I mean, there's things that I like to do. I like the quietness of my space because it gives me the opportunity to create. When I don't have somebody sitting in front of me, but I'm talking with them either via text, HIPAA compliant text, or email, I have time. I have that space to kind of check in. I'm not reacting. It gives me what I need. So this is a true confession right here. So this is really what it's all about. It's like letting go of this belief system, because if you think about it, if we're going to just talk about what I just said, what I really like, that's what I really like to do. I am very sensitive to other people's energy. Being out in a crowd makes me uncomfortable, especially for any length of time. So if I can, I'm not saying isolate myself and never have friends. That's not what I'm saying. But for me, the workspace is very important. So if I were to be really true and honest about what my belief system is, for me, it's really kind of, I don't like to use the word separating, but I think you get what I'm saying. It's allowing myself the space to think and feel and respond, instead of cramming me into something that is going to cause me to react and not be thoughtful enough, which my people, my clients, deserve a mindful answer, a well thought out, composed answer, not something that is steeped in anxiety because I'm picking up on somebody else's energy. And what I'm saying may not align with everybody else. Because truthfully, culturally, we have this thing that if you want to work with somebody, you got to meet with them face to face. You got to sit down, you got to have like this like big to do, and it's like it just doesn't work for me. And I'm only coming into realizing that. So like I said, this is true confessions. I've hung on to things in my life that for whatever reason, it was, like, especially as of late, there's been some things that I've been prodded to let go of that I haven't let go of, and it's actually brought me into a significant breakdown in my life. But that doesn't mean that there's an end. It's not like the end of my life. It's just the end of this cycle. And I realize that what I need to do is completely let that go in order to be in this space of just, okay, what's next? But just that pause, just to pause. But that rigidity of hanging on to something because it is going to be, it's because there is some, I don't know how to describe it, to hang on to something because it already exists in our life, but it's no longer serving us is actually detrimental. So think about rigidity in the sense of rigid muscles, okay, spastic muscles. That can be classified as, it'll be classified at some point as some sort of dis-ease or disorder. So rigidity, by all rights, is a dis-ease or a disorder. It's diseased thinking or disordered thinking. I'm going to put it that way. And when we get to that, yes, there are environmental factors. Yes, there are mental and emotional factors that are leading to stress in the system. However, this level of rigidity that many of us face, and I've seen it countless times. I mean, so many people are afraid to let go because what happens? Like, a good example. I'll use myself as an example. Making the change from what I was doing and the population of people that I was serving, and I guess I'm just going to be transparent here. If you're new, you're unfamiliar with this, but I've worked extensively with the Amish culture. And for months now, I've been feeling like I need to let it go and I need to transition into something else. But I didn't want to let go of them. I felt bad. I was ashamed of myself because I was going to let them go. I had this whole story concocted around that. So I didn't do it. And not to mention the fact I didn't want to let them go until I had something else in place. Well, the interesting thing is what ultimately happened was everything spiraled downwards with them, meaning they stopped, they weren't paying. It just, like I said, massive breakdown. And that's the first time in my life that I've ever made a change without a pause. Historically, I have been one of these people that just goes, oh, I'm done. I reached the point, I'm done. And I make a shift. And I don't necessarily have, sorry for all the reflection, I don't necessarily have the anything fully lined up. I just know that I'm done. And I have gotten myself beaten over the head countless times by other people's belief systems. That is risky, that is irresponsible, that is selfish, you name it. I've been called so many different things because this is how I operated, but what made sense to me. It was I did have a significant level of spontaneity, and while there may be some fine line there, balance, that I didn't ever, and I don't recall falling down in the sense that I bottomed out. I never did, but eventually over time, I started taking other people's beliefs on and became so hung up on what I had created, but it was no longer serving me. And I could list the reasons why, and if you want to know why, feel free to contact me. But it just, working with that particular culture no longer served my being. I guess I'll just list a few here. Basically, they don't like to challenge the system. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but however, we are our own individual culture, like I mentioned. I believe in independent thinking, but they live in, they're riddled by fear. They are seriously stifled by fear, so there's even more rigidity. And interestingly enough, speaking of that, they did actually have a sector of their culture that were referred to as the Shakers. That is how rigid they became. And so, like I mentioned, rigid thinking can be equal to diseased or disordered thinking. And so, beginning to allow ourselves the space to transition, to end a particular time in our life and be able to move on and be okay, knowing that we're going to be fine. We're all being taken care of. We may not like it, and this is what I say oftentimes about our health. We may not like our current circumstances. However, we will get everything that we need. We have everything that we need to survive. And, we could come up with all kinds of arguments how this isn't the case. We can argue for all kinds of people and say that their lives are unfair. I mean, when I think about my own life and I compare it to other people, I could say the same thing, but I'm not going to go there. So I stand in the foundation that I am completely sourced. And letting go of something and not being so rigid about it is significant. And I remember the other day when I realized I openly admitted to a number of people that I was just done, done. I started crying because my father was so very, very rigid in the way he operated in life. I mean, detailed. I mean, it was like he was so flippin' predictable. It was scary. And I'm not saying that, habits, I mean there's something to, we're humans. I mean, there's a predictability to our behavior as it is. But being so rigid that things have to be a certain way. I know there's a diagnosis out there called, OCD, right? I mean, it has to be a certain way. And it's repetitive and so on and so forth. I think we just would be better off not having all these diagnoses, truthfully. However, so in my dad's case, he was so habitually predictable and he ended up dying with Parkinson's. I don't even have to go into explaining that, but that terrified me because I should say that didn't terrify me. It terrified me that I was being so rigid in the way I was doing things and expecting my life to go, that I was afraid I didn't want to fall into his footsteps. So I just let everything go. And I have no idea how things are going to roll out. But what I do know is that the most important thing for me to do at this point is to distinguish the difference between my yes and my no's. Really, what's fueling my yes and my no. If I had to pick anything as far as my rigid thinking is concerned, the calcified belief is I have to say yes in order to be accepted. I have to say yes in order to make money. I have to say yes to be, to be welcomed into a community or have friends. I mean, that's how rigid. So if I were to pick anything besides the Amish, that would be the biggest one that I was. I would say yes to everything. And saying yes to everything, people could say that's being a people pleaser. Well, yeah, but it's dangerous. And I see way too many people doing it. And so being able to distill the difference between a yes and a no, and being okay with the no, and trusting that you're taking care of yourself. No is taking care of yourself. Just like saying, yes, I'm going to go, I want to work in my own space. That's taking care of myself. No, I don't want to pay rent in an office. No, I don't. I mean, this is taking care of myself. And I have consistently said yes to so many different things. So that said, I think about the messages that we send to the body. Okay, so enough about me. I'm just, like I said, this is just true confessions. And so for as I hope this helps people. I'm happy to start a conversation about this with you guys. We can do it in the comments below. You're welcome to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. I at Tammy Davis 8. I just really feel like it's time that we just get real with one another. We respect one another's differences, right down to our belief systems. We agree to disagree, and we become easier. We become softer, because this rigidity. I mean, the other day I shared. I had created a document on olfactory therapy and what it's good for, and I'll put a link here for you on that as well. And movement disorders is great. I mean, it's very responsive to olfactory therapy. Why? Because essential oils actually cross the blood-brain barrier. Why? Because the olfactory bulb is a direct extension of the brain. The nose is the only sense that has a direct communication with the brain. Everything else has to be filtered. This is not being filtered. These are just registering. And believe it or not, olfactory neurons are plugged into the epithelium of the body. So there is significant importance to activating the olfactory system, actually using it to our advantage. And so movement disorders was one of them. And that really, really responds well. And somebody contacted me and, wanted to know what a movement disorder was. And so I started listing all the different types of diagnoses, and it's unbelievable, because usually we think of Parkinson's. And the interesting thing is, I kid you not, I no longer, and this was completely two different formats that I was talking to people. So in one format, it was a private conversation. Well, they're all private. Well, it was privately public, so it's a group on Facebook. And somebody asked me, "What is movement disorder?" So I started listing them, and essential tremors is one of them. So we were just getting into, and the bottom line is it's just involuntary movements. Even if your action is voluntary, like reaching for something, there's an involuntary twitch, involuntary twists, spasticity. So all of these things are considered, but I could not get over the number of diagnoses. And of course, they're all classified. They have their classifications because there's a variation of symptoms within each diagnosis. So I do understand that. At the same time, the neurochemistry involved is all the same. But nonetheless, the very next day, I kid you not, the very next day, someone calls me. Not even a part of this Facebook group. Somebody had actually referred her to me. She happens to be an acupuncturist. And of all things, she was diagnosed with essential tremors a year ago. Now, the point to that is the number of movement disorders that are being classified given the level of rigid thinking that I'm seeing. And again, it can be something simple. It could be not wanting to let go of a particular type of client, like I was talking about, right? That was no longer serving me, but I was so attached to being afraid of not making money that I clung on to it. It could be something as simple as understanding that we say yes to everything, or maybe we say no to everything and we're isolating ourselves, however the case may be. It could be anything for anyone, but whatever we're hanging on to religiously, because it's what we know, it's what's gotten us to this point. Saying yes got me involved with people, got me into social circles. It did actually help get me clients. Did they work out to be the best clients? We weren't a good match. So I've learned from this, and at the same time, I've got to learn how to stop saying yes. And so this is my time for that. But what I'm getting at is that this level of rigid thinking that I see so many people hanging on to, and we have this level of movement disorders, spasticity, Tourette's. We can go on and on and on. But the number of people that are beginning to experience muscle spasms on a regular basis, you probably are going to look at me and go, you're out of your mind. But the fact is that there's a mind-body connection. Go back to Deepak Chopra. He was the first person I ever heard talk about that, and that was over 25 years ago. And it's hard to imagine, but then again, there's like Dr. Bruce Lipton, who talks about the biology of belief. Okay, so these beliefs, these calcified beliefs, are going to lead to, I mean, just think about these words. Okay, so rigid thinking, calcification. I mean, how many people have calcified arteries? How many people, so we don't necessarily have to have movement disorders, but we can look at the body seizing up. We can look at, like I said, calcifications in the kidneys. We can look at gallstones. We can look at arthritis. Again, even though that's not a classified movement disorder, okay, that is more of an autoimmune when you're looking at arthritis. There is a rigidity to it. Okay, there's muscle stiffness. There's a lot of stiffness happening. If I want to say it a different way, there's a lot of, so yeah, let's just kind of move beyond the movement disorder like I was talking about, because the more I think about this, the more I realize that so many people are displaying illnesses that incorporate these words, rigidity, calcification. And so what can we do to begin to dissolve these beliefs? And my feeling is it's being easier on ourselves. It's beginning to be softer. It's the only, we can choose to be hard and harsh, or we can choose to be soft. And I know many people think, well, if I'm soft on myself, then I'm opening myself up to, I'm vulnerable. Well, vulnerability is a point of power, because when you're vulnerable and you're open, there's an awareness. This isn't about being unprotected. In that radio show I did the other day, I invited a Feldenkrais practitioner on, and one of the things that he said that Moshe Feldenkrais talked about was being able to protect yourself, kind of finding that quietness in your mind, in your being, not to the point where you're so relaxed and you fall asleep, but where you're centered to the degree where you can protect yourself. Okay, because he was very much a martial artist. Well, the same thing goes here. When you relieve yourself of the harshness, of the rigid thinking, of the rigidity in your behaviors, and you will open yourself up, you have more ability to protect yourself. But when we're up here and we're stuck and we're hung up and we're hanging on to all these things, we are actually killing ourselves. It is disordered and diseased thinking, and we are seeing more and more degenerative disease occurring. Like I said, the neurochemistry is all the same, no matter how you want to diagnose any of it. The chemistry is, I shouldn't say it's not all the same chemicals, it's variations in the chemistry. But the bottom line is the body's extraordinarily stressed, mentally, emotionally, environmentally. It's altering the body physiologically, which then negates the way the body uses the nutrients, and so therefore the body remains in this chronic state of stress. So what do we do? Well, we can take days like today, and probably if you may be watching this days after the new moon, because it takes a little while for me to upload videos from where I am in the mountains. But the fact is if we, take the time to recognize, give yourself the space to recognize those repeated behaviors that you are clinging to, because that's what they have helped you survive until this point. The funny thing is we think death is the end of our life, that's when our body expires and we go, but we experience cycles of death all the time. That's the part of the reason why I love this time of year, because this is the middle of winter and fall. And this is where it's starting to get dark and everything's starting to go dormant. Everything's starting to go inside, resource itself, recenter itself, and recalculate the next phase. So this is an opportunity to end, to complete this one particular cycle, to actually have that aspect, that rigid aspect, die. Are you willing to allow that rigid aspect to die? And in turn, be in that space of resourcing and recalculating and reinventing the next phase based on everything that you've learned about yourself until this point? Can you commit yourself? Can you teach your children how to commit themselves to being more fluid? We're 78, we're about 70% water, but we're so freaking rigid. Can we commit ourselves to being fluid? Identifying when we get scared. Fear is a natural experience, but can we just allow the fear to be there, but not ultimately influence the next step? It might shape it a little bit, but can we be more fluid about it and not cling so heavily to old beliefs that, like I said, may have served us up until this point, but what are we looking for? What's next? Can we be brutally honest with ourselves? What is it that we really want in our lives? Because the truth is the more we can commit to fluidity, the more fluid the body can be, the more it can actually find relief. Because again, the biology relief does factor into this. Because the more rigid we are, the more calcified we are in our belief system, the more disease and disorder we're going to experience. And again, it takes time. This is the reason why I'm talking about olfactory therapy. It absolutely takes time, especially when we're, in my case, when we're so used to thinking a certain way. So physiological effects of stress is in the description box as well. And I'm also going to suggest the use of essential oils. Now, this is something I want to say here. One of the things we have to step away from is the universal use of any plant. We are not our ancestors. Our ancestors, when they first started using plants for healing and wellness, they did not live in the world that we do. 45 million chemicals being used worldwide. There's no telling how many each one of us is consuming on a daily basis, whether we're putting it on our skin, breathing it through the air, drinking it, eating it, taking it in medication form, taking it in supplement form. It doesn't make any difference. There's 45 million chemicals affecting us on a daily basis that are known endocrine disruptors. So that alone is going to add to the stress. So we cannot be, I'm looking at this light. We cannot be so rigid in the way we use these things. We have to be more fluid in the way that we use these things. So I will not. I have in the past, and I've stopped now because it is socially irresponsible to be making just blanket recommendations for the use of oils, because so many people have so many different things going on, not to mention the fact that they're taking medications. So that said, I feel bad because everybody has the right to make money, but the way we are doing this is we're putting things on shelves. It reduces customer interaction. It's just produce a product and people can be happy, and that is just, sometimes it works, other times it doesn't. Things get shelved, and so it's important to know that the use of oils, number one, is unique to the individual. You don't want to ever use, just like your packaged foods, you want to limit the amount of pre-blended oils that you use. Now, and the reason I'm talking about essential oils is because, number one, they do three things. There's symptom relief, they improve physiological function, and they relieve cell stress, or they relieve stress at the cellular level. And that's how I implement them. And like I said, for the most part, olfactory therapy is really great. Sometimes if you actually have issue on the body, like joint pain or so forth, you're going to have to use something else besides just sniffing it. But that said, that will make a big difference with helping to regulate neurochemistry so that it becomes easier to let go of these old beliefs that are no longer serving you, that are not going to serve you, that you have distinguished will not benefit you in the next phase of your life. Because again, this is the point where we get to go inward, we get to reassess everything and reinvent, recreate, however we want to do it. This is that moment. And so, like I said, And we can't be using herbs either. I got an email this morning that's like how to integrate herbs and oils for the, for immune system. And we're going to give you the combination. And it's like, you can't do that. You just can't do that. Again, we're not the same species that we were 100 years ago, let alone 1,000 years ago. The environment has changed so drastically, and the way each body reacts is very unique, because in spite of the fact that we share DNA that helps us look similar, 2 eyes, hair, 2 arms, the basic human attributes, beyond that, especially where it comes to the epigenome, there's a wide difference. And that's where we're talking about lipophilic chemicals affecting the epigenome. And so this is the reason why I'm strongly encouraging, if you're interested in something like this, please get in touch with me. You're welcome to visit my website, synergessence.com. You can email me through there. You can also, like I said, I'm flexible. I'm very, very flexible when it comes to cost. So just let me know. Let me know what you got going on, how I can help you. And if you have any questions based on this, a lot of this was about me, but I did this because, well, I didn't have any script. And number 2, I believe that if we all can begin, I hoped it was relatable, because I know I'm not the only one that faces these kinds of experiences in life. And we're all in this together. Okay, we're all in this together. And so my desire is to help whoever this resonates with. And so please share and please connect with me. And anyway, no matter what, I appreciate you watching, especially if you got to 35 minutes. Awesome. You guys be well. I'll talk to you very soon. Bye now.